Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to J Raids, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Today's video, I want to go over the fourth meta snapshot and the second one that is going to be covered on my channel here. And in today's topic, we're going to be covering what nobody will tell you about gearing your champs in this arena meta. This is going to be, I think, one of the most pivotal episodes, I would say, in terms of what you guys can hopefully get out of this. I want to make everything real to you guys in terms of what changes you can actually do to your champions in the arena, gearing wise, that I think are going to significantly improve your overall arena experience. And so I've been talking about the meta, I'm talking about this and that. Today we're going to ground that, turn that into something that you guys can do. And if you guys can understand what's going on in today's videos and ingrain that for yourselves, whether that be in the way you guys re-gear your champions, I think this is going to be the best for you guys. So with no further ado, let's jump into it. So the first things first is this. I'm going to talk to you about what I call the Predator Speed Index, or the PSI. And this is going to be a metric that I'm going to use as a sort of foundation for when I talk about the meta, the speed of the champions that you're seeing, and ultimately the reason why there is going to be this whole shift in how you want to gear your champions. In this meta, there are two major changes that I think have been big disruptors. The first one, of course, being the new addition of the Mercurial set. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in terms of this, I think one of the big impacts is, of course, Predator as a champion. For him being available through the Forge Pass means that a lot of players have Predator on their accounts, and Predator is one of the strongest HP Nuker champions in the game right now as well. So he is very, very powerful and can be very meta warping, which if you guys have read some of my past meta reports, you guys can start to get a glimpse of why. But in this video, again, I want to ingrain everything, explain why things are the way they are, and what that means for your gear. So in this case, Predator Speed Index is my level of the foundation of the meta. In terms of how people are gearing Predator, he's mostly in a full damage sort of build, focusing solely on building HP because his base HP is so high. So they're stacking HP on the boots, which is one of the main ones. So the Predator Speed Index is anchored around Predator being built in HP boots, and his end is just a measure of his speed. Right now in high-end arena, if you take into consideration just the builds of Predator, I would say that the PSI is roughly around 250. That's about the speed that I'm seeing for Predator when he's being built in this full HP damage set. And everything else is sort of adjusted around to that. So for example, I think if Predator is running at this 250 speed, Nukers generally are running a little bit faster than that because they may be building speed boots instead of whatever defense, attack, or HP percentage based boots. And so generally speaking, Nukers are within this 280 to 350 range. And I'll quickly jump into my account and you guys can take a look for that yourselves. So my Marius is running at, why is my Marius so slow? Because he doesn't have gear? Why is my Marius so slow? 319. Something's not right. My Marius shouldn't be that slow. What did I change here? Why is my Marius so slow? Huh, okay. I thought my Marius was a little bit faster, but my Marius is around 318. Or 319. I originally thought he was around 330, and I've had builds that were a little bit faster on the 340. Carnage is another champion that you often see pretty fast. He's about 310 speed, and then Embrius I had running at this build isn't correct either. Just to showcase for you guys, I had my Predator running around 314 speed. So these champions I'm fairly proud of overall in terms of how fast that I've been able to get them. And generally speaking, they're around that 300 and up range, as it's really been the faster you can build your champions, the better, right before we got this new meta. And so a lot of my champions are in this range of 300 and up, really. Then you have your Mercurial champions. And because Mercurial is a rather new gear set, the overall speed that people are achieving with this gear set are still not super high yet. maybe in the 350 to 400 range. For example, my Galathier right here, we'll talk a little bit about some of the re-gearing stuff that I did later, but if I swap my Galathier into his full Mercurial set, you see he's running around 370 speed. I do have one more champion that I do have in Mercurial, and that is my Queen of Hearts, and she is running around 340 speed. And I would say these are my two fastest Mercurial sets. So overall, just due to how new Mercurial is, the speed range for people still in full Mercurial, especially those that are just more supports rather than just the damage dealers, are probably around this 350 to 400 range. Finally, you have the lockout champions like the Crixia, the Armonds, or the Fabians, and then above that again, you have the speed boosters. And generally speaking, in terms of what I'm seeing right now, is a lot of these lockout champions are actually very, very fast around the 420 and up range, especially when they're paired with a speed aura and have intimidating presence. Unfortunately for me, missing a helmet there. But unfortunately for me, my champions are relatively slow. So you see here that Night Queen, my Crixia is only about 390 speed. Of course, she doesn't have a 6-star blessing. My Fabian, even with the 6-star blessing, if I can find the helmet that I usually have on him. Let's see, Supersonic. Is it equipped somewhere? Let's see, is it this one? Yeah, okay. Is just 390 as well. So roughly around the same, right? And a bit slower for what the meta wants, but that's okay. And then finally, on top of that, the speed boosters that you have seen in the past and probably a little bit less now have really been around that 450 range, and generally speaking, a lot faster. And this is the kind of range of speeds that you're going to see at a super high end level, the kind of level that I'm usually at, like a high end platinum arena or high end gold 4 kind of or sorry, not tag, but live arena. And this is just the baseline of predators running around 250 speed. Now, the lower the meta you are, your PSI is going to be a little bit different. So on the right side here, we have a mid-tier arena where the PSI is about 200. And you can see how some of the different champions, some of the different speed ranges are generally going to be a little bit slower as well. So you can take some time to sort of look through this, and depending on what you find your PSI to be at, you can kind of scale back the speeds accordingly. Now, this is just anything below the high end arena is really just me extrapolating based on what seems appropriate. Depending on what you find your gear to be overall, you might find yourself to be above or below these ranges, and that's totally fine. But let's talk about what is going on with the meta and what that means for your gear. And the biggest change is that speed boosters, generally speaking, are just less good as well as being less prevalent. I'm going to quickly hop into Platinum Arena here, and you can just quickly see what I'm talking about. If we go down the list here, you know, this is fairly high ranking. This is, you know, I'm 3960. Oh, you guys can't see this. Let's see. Sorry about that. 39. Yeah, so 3960 here at the bottom is, oh, you guys can't see this either. That's a little bit awkward. There you go, right there. It's rank 4. And you know, these guys are going from 3860 all the way to the top, right? And I just want you guys to count how many speed boosters there are. Let's see, top team, Crixia, Theodosia, no speed boosters. Theodosia Fabian, no speed boosters. Carnage Theodosia Fabian, no speed boosters. And then we finally have this one that does have both Marichka as well as Galathier, but these are more definitely speed. These champions do have speed boosters skills in their kit, but definitely probably either built slower than that and not aiming to be something like an Arbaeus or an Arbiter that is a little bit more one-dimensional. So these definitely have big revives in their kit, extra survivability, and other utility, so on and so forth. Let's see, Odin, Raglan. I mean, yes, Raglan has a speed boost in a kit, but you guys are seeing the pattern here. There's no Arbaeuses, there's no Arbiters, there's no other speed boosters, or at least champions that are solely focused on being able to be first and speed boost into the next champion. And so at a meta glance, especially as you get higher and higher up, into the meta, sorry, I'm gonna readjust the screen real quick. And especially as you get higher into the meta, you're going to see a lot less speed boosters or people choosing to rely on speed boosters less, especially for defense. And why is that really is one of the big questions. I think there are two main reasons. One is, of course, Mercurial coming around. Because of how strong Mercurial is overall as a gear set, even though the set is still relatively new, it just provides so much tankiness to support champions that even though they go second, they still are able to survive, be immune to like CC, you can't bomb them. So a lot of these go first strategies are definitely mitigated a little bit when fighting against teams in full Mercurial. The second reason is Predator, and why I think Predator is one of the biggest meta warping champions that we have seen in quite a while. And this is just a quick illustration of a little simulation. You can kind of think about this in your head or through your experience when you've been running teams against Predator. I just want to start with a little bit of a cherry pick data point. This is not purposely cherry picked to try to prove my point per se, but I will just say that it's probably not super indicative, given that this was, I'm not sure what sort of time range this data is being collected from, but I think it paints the right picture that you can kind of think about. So in Silver 4, I think it's Silver 4 of Live Arena, I would say this is a fairly sort of middling range for players. You can see Arbiter is a fairly popular champion. She has a pick rate of about 50%, and Predator has only about a pick rate of 16%, right? However, Arbiter's win rate is only about 30%, while Predator is about 33.5%, right? Predator has a much higher win rate despite the fact that the pick rate is so much lower, and Arbiter sees a little bit of the inverse of that relation, right? So why is that? Let's think about when you are playing into Predator and when you're playing against Predator. So for the top one, let's imagine you have a team Arbiter, or Arbiter into Armons, and then you have two Nukers. Let's say it's He-Man and Embrius, or whatever just Nukers you have. So your Arbiter is the fastest champion, speed boost. Your Armons goes in with a stun, but because Predator is Predator, he is able to evade the stun, and you are unable to crowd control him. Then your Nukers line up next. Maybe they're in Stone Skin, but they still go up next because of the Arbiter speed boost. They do their nuke, but again, Predator evades and they're unable to kill the Predator. When the Predator gets to go after your entire team has already gone, all of a sudden Predator just nukes down your team because he's built purely for damage. And then if he doesn't end the game right there, he has 60% evade chance, and all of a sudden he's a nightmare to kill, right? Now, the second sort of simulation I want you guys to think about is when, let's say you try to pair Arbiter with Predator. Let's say you have Arbiter and Predator on the same team and some other champions, who knows, who cares? But your Arbiter goes in with the speed boost, your Predator then goes before your enemy team, and then he just hits into a bunch of Stone Skin, right? He does his big A2, the whole AoE kind of ability, and all of a sudden you're just hitting champions, Nukers that are in Stone Skin, and you're unable to kill any of them. Now your Predator has no veil, has 0% chance to evade any attacks, and then the opponent team goes and then wipes your team as well, right? Because your Predator can't survive. So this whole notion of speed boosting is really around this sort of idea of Predator, depending on how frequently you see him, of course, but he is a fairly popular champion, of course, easy to obtain, easy to build, and hard to deal with. And so even across all ranks of Arena, he has a very stable sort of presence that definitely is something that is warping to the overall meta. So regardless of your Arena rank, you are going to be seeing a ton of Predator. And what happens is if you want to go first into Predator, he has that chance to evade you. And then if you want to speed boost your Predator, all of a sudden he's not killing anybody, and then your team dies. This whole idea of speed boosting is just a lot weaker of a concept when you think that even if I get to go first, Predator can evade, or if I have Predator on my team and Predator goes first, he doesn't kill anybody and now he's defenseless. And I think this is a fundamental understanding of the meta that if you guys can get a big grasp on, you guys are going to see exactly why this affects how you gear your champions. So let's talk into how we want to gear our champions now. This is going to be a little bit of a simpler one. This is for the speed boosters, and generally speaking, I think there is going to be relatively little change to your overall speed boosters because there is less speed boosters around, or their effectiveness is a little bit mitigated. There are some alternate opportunities for you to build your speed champion. So maybe now you can sacrifice a little bit speed in favor of a protection set or 9-piece protection set, for example. Someone like a Sifi or Arbeus provides a lot of buffs out there, and protected buffs are generally quite good. In addition, you get that extra damage bonus from the protection set, but the idea here is still to be the fastest champion on this on the field. But now maybe you're fighting against the Mercurial champions, and if you guys remember, if you guys bring a speed booster into a Mercurial champion, Mercurial set's going to have a much lower sort of speed possibility than what you're probably normally bringing. So it's very likely that regardless of how you're building your speed boosters, as long as they have a decently fast sort of gear set, they are going to be the fastest champions on the field regardless. Of course, you do want to try to aim them to be a little bit faster than the lockout champions. But speed sets might be a little bit less in favor. You can sacrifice a little bit of speed in favor of more protection, either from a 9-piece Mercurial set if you do have the flexibility of it, or something like a protection set to make your buffs a little bit better, or the utility of your champions a little bit more. For your stats, of course, the main stat to focus on here is speed. So if you're looking at a PSI of 250, again, the high level arena, you should probably aim for speed above 420. And as you get lower PSI, let's say at 200, maybe a good number is probably around 380. So the goal again here is to be the fastest champion on the field, but now maybe you're not competing as much for that speed, right? If you are trying to run into something like this team over here that has Theodosia instead of a speed booster. Theodosia is probably built in that Mercurial, so regardless, your speed booster is probably going to be the fastest champion. And so I'm going to talk about with each step how I am actually changing my builds based on the meta. So beforehand, my Sifi was my fastest champion. She was 452 speed, which is, I think, reasonably fast. I was winning the majority of my speed battles. But now there is a little bit less of a need for speed because there's just less speed boosters out there. And so I'm considering this shift to a 9-piece protection set instead. I think the speed overall is still a little bit too slow for what I'm looking for. If I switch over to a 9-piece protection set, it's only about 401 speed. Ideally, this is again above the 420 benchmark, but this is the idea for now. And there's another reason why I'm doing this as well, and that is going to jump into the second part. But for now, my idea is to drop my Sifi from being my fastest champion into a 9-piece protection set to favor more of that utility of the protected buffs. So the next one is the CC Lockout champions. You can think your Armons, your Warlord, your Crixia, your Fabian, your Yumeko, whatever it might be. And I think this is where we're starting to get into the big shifts in how you think about gearing your champions. So what did we talk about last? We talked about these speed booster champions being less prevalent and what happens because of that. So the big thing that happens next is that all of a sudden, it's not your speed boosters that are the fastest champions fighting to go first. Now it's your CC lockout champions fighting for that spot to go first, to lock out the enemy team before you are able to lock them out. Or before they're able to lock you out. Sorry about that. And so what does this mean from a gearing standpoint? This means that sets historically, such as Supersonic, which have been very good and have been what I had built my champions in the past. So someone like Crixia, I've had in a Stone Skin set plus a Supersonic set, because Supersonic at 5 pieces does the thing where I get to fill my turn meter for each buff placed by the enemy. And historically, this has been a good set to sort of be able to cut into speed boosters because speed boosters usually place buffs. So someone like Sifi is a fantastic and easy example of that. With her A2, she places 3 buffs and a speed boost. And this is a perfect example of why Supersonic has been a good gear set. But now you're going to be seeing less of those speed boosters. Now champions like Fabian and Crixie are fighting to go first. All of a sudden, Supersonic as a 5-piece set just loses a lot of value because the first champion to go is going to be the Crixie, the Fabians, the Warlords, the Umekos, the whatnots. All of a sudden, you're not going to get any benefit out of a 5-piece Supersonic set because there's not going to be any buffs for you to cut in. And so there is a critical shift in the importance of speed specifically for these champions. Oftentimes these again are going to be the fastest champions on your team and are going to be deserving of some of the fastest gear. So what I'm changing with my Crixia is I'm taking a lot of that speed gear that I used to have on my Sifi, but now I am putting it onto my Crixia. Beforehand, she had about, actually that's not the right, is that the right one? Maybe? Yeah, so she has 390 in speed. I can get that up to 429 speed. I think this is the best, fastest build for my Crixia while still maintaining some resistance and accuracy to land the lockout. And this is a pretty sizable speed boost. This is 39 speed in addition to what I had before. And what this is doing is I'm replacing that stone skin. I'm replacing that supersonic for gear that gives speed. I have 4 pieces of impulse. I have a 3-piece of protection. And this is pretty good when you are fighting for that speed. You want these champions to be the fastest. You want to pair them with the speed aura. You want to have things like a speed relic or intimidating presence to fight for that fastest spot. Now, the problem with this is, while I think directionally this is correct, for me in particular, I have a hard time fitting in a speed aura onto my team. So for example, if I look at my arena team and my arena champions, I don't have a speed aura on my team. My only speed auras that I have are Carnage, which is definitely one of the best arena speed auras. Let's just take this apart. I have Carnage, right? I can run Carnage for the 33%, but in terms of my team compositions, it is a little bit awkward for at least Classic Arena. In Live Arena, I think there's some more, there's some more flexibility, but my other options are something like Fabian, but I'm not really wanting to run Fabian with Crixie because they kind of do very similar things. And then that leaves me with one really other option, and that's Lady Noelle, which right now I just don't have built for the standard of arena that I'm in. So for me, it's hard to incorporate a speed aura onto my team. And what that means is it's hard for me to really fight to be the fastest champion on the field because I'm losing out from just having a speed aura, which might be 20 to extra 20 speed, extra 30 speed. It's a big difference that makes me not always and usually not able to win the speed race because my Crixie is not going to be fast enough, even at what is, I think, a relatively fast speed for a champion like this, just 429. And so for me, I think I have been trying to settle on a little bit of a middle ground, and that's just dropping the supersonic in favor of... Actually, this isn't even any faster, is it? Oh, that's kind of awkward. This set's not even faster than my supersonic set. That's kind of funny. But generally speaking, for me, it's still important to have the stone skin on my Crixia because I'm not able to fight for that first slot. If I was more confident in my speed sets, if I had champions that had good speed auras, I think the main one that you see very popular right now is Theodosia. That's kind of like the perfect one. But if you are having a speed aura on your team and you are confident in the speeds you're able to build your lockout champions, I think it is good to prioritize speed on them. But specifically for me, because I think I'm unable to be winning the speed races at my level, it's still fine for me to have Stone Skin instead. And Supersonic just happens to be my fastest gear because at the end of the day, it still is a speed set. So, at 5 piece Supersonic, I'm still gaining 20% speed, and that's decent. It's not the best, but it's still decent. So for me, Supersonic is still one of my faster gear sets, but I could aim for faster. But for me, again, because I don't have that speed aura, it's unlikely for me to go first. And I think at that point, Stone Skin is a little bit better. Now, when it comes to your PSIs or when it comes to your speeds and what kind of range you're looking to build for, I think at the end game, when you have a PSI of about 250, you're really aiming for that 400 to 420 speed, and whatever the fastest you can build, you gotta have it. But accuracy, I think, can be a lot lower, and the reason is you're seeing a lot fewer resistance builds in favor of, again, a 9-piece Mercurial kind of going around on most supports. And right now, the level of resistance that you can build with a 9-piece support just isn't as high, even though it can be fairly high and it can scale, as the months go on and we get more Grim Forest resets. Right now, I just don't see the need for too much accuracy quite yet. So what this means is you can sacrifice a little bit of accuracy to build more speed. And I think the threshold you should be aiming for is try to get at least 600 accuracy, but really, really try to get at least 420 speed. Of course, for a lower PSI, let's say your PSI is about 200, that speed threshold you might want to aim for is about 350 and with at least 550 accuracy. And the next part is the revivers. This is probably the easier one, but generally speaking, because speed boosters are less valuable, less good, the champions that are often replacing them are really tanky revivers. The champions like Theodosia, like Galathyr, like Hilvi, even champions like Ankara or Duchess, right, for example, are super tanky revivers that have either full team revives, extra CC, whatnot, right? And of course, the end goal is to get them into a 9-piece Mercurial set. This is my build that I had on my Galathyr before. It was a super high resistance build. I could almost get about 900 resistance at about 354 speed. But I stumbled upon a really nice Mercurial build. That's not the right one. Let's change the chest plate. But I stumbled upon a pretty nice Mercurial build that I was able to get for my where is my Mercurial chest plate? It's this one. I was able to get a pretty nice Mercurial set for my Star Sage Galathyr, and so now I'm looking at about 369 speed, but my resistance is, of course, a lot lower. I only have about 650 resistance. And so because Mercurial is a newer set, I'm not able to build as much resistance as I want. And the main one is I don't have a Mercurial resistance banner, right? I'm losing out on almost 100 resistance purely off of my banner. And, something like my shield just doesn't have any resistance at all. So I could build a lot more resistance on my Galathyr, and I'm really wanting to. But for now, this is the kind of build that I have. And it's totally fine. It's very, very effective for me. The speed is good. It's within the range that I'm looking for. He's fairly tanky. And of course, he has that 9-piece Mercurial. But the other question is, well, maybe I don't have the best 9-piece Mercurial set for, my team. What is my next option? And this is where I think actually 6-piece of Stone Skin is fairly reasonable. Being able to have super tanky revivers with a 6-piece Stone Skin is actually quite good in today's meta, just based off of the speed of how things are going. So, for example, I have Lady Noelle, who is still in a 6-piece Stone Skin. She has she has really high resistance. I think it is something that you do want to try to pair with your Stone Skin in order to protect it and to make sure that your champions can stay useful after all the lockout. So she's fairly slow. This is too slow for what I'm running. So, which is one of the big reasons why Lady Noelle isn't really a really mainstay champion for me, because I just don't have the right build for her. But because I don't have a good Mercurial set for her, something like a 6-piece Stone Skin is still very, very viable. And I think it's something that you can build on a lot of your support champions. Of course, something like a 9-piece Mercurial set is still the best, but if that isn't an option, I think going back to something like a 9 to 6-piece Stone Skin for that 2 turns of Stone Skin buff is still very good. And a little bit of stats for just the overall speed you should aim for at a PSI of about 250. Of course, the speed is fairly high, around that 300 to 400 range, 350 to 400 range. But again, as you go down around the PSI of 200, something around 300 to 350 is something you should aim for. And of course, whatever resistance and accuracy you also want to build to make your champions functional, you should try to achieve that if you can. All right. This is the last section, and I think the most important section in terms of how the meta is changing. And I think this is probably the biggest change and the most valuable to kind of understand, and that is for Nukers. So before we jump into it, let's review why. And it comes back down to this. If your Nuker goes first and doesn't kill Predator, Predator is going to kill your Nukers. And then all of a sudden, Predator can't be killed because he evades everything. And yeah, that's it. That's the super fundamental, super simple concept that has significant impact on how you decide to gear your champions, especially your Nukers. Because they are the squishiest, right? It's hard for your Predator to kill like a 6-piece Stone Skin Hilvy or like a Galathier, right? It's not easy for Predator to kill these super tanky supports. But these Nukers, these super squishy Nukers, even defense-based, HP-based Nukers, they just stand no chance against Predator if you're unable to kill Predator. And this is where you see a little bit of a division in how you decide to gear your Nukers. And this is where speed on Nukers is no longer a guarantee of a good, or it's no longer a good stat to have all the time. So before this meta, I think however much speed you can get on your Nukers, the faster you can build your Nukers without sacrificing the damage or the accuracy is always good. You always wanted to push your Nukers faster because you wanted to push every champion faster. You wanted your speed booster to be faster. You wanted your next champion to go next to be faster in order to go right after the speed booster. And then you wanted your Nukers to be as fast as possible in order to go before your team and blow up your enemy, right? But now I think there is a little bit of a divide. And there is going to be one camp that is the Nukers that you can still build fast, but now the other camp that I think you now have more opportunity and flexibility to now bring your Nuker speed down. And this is very important. There's 2 camps, again, one the fast Nuker and now one the slow Nuker. And for fast Nukers, this is usually champions that have either extra safety in their kit, so someone like Nice, the Shadow Thief, right? Now, it's a little bit of an exception because Nice, the Shadow Thief, most likely is built very, very tanky regardless, but is a champion that can be built faster because he has his survival passive, right? Someone like Cheshire Cat, I think, is a great example of this, where Cheshire Cat scales with speed, so his damage scales off of him going faster, and he has his passive where he can place block damage and perfect veil on himself to make him a little bit more tanky and not being able to get targeted, right? So there are champions that exist that can be built fast, or champions that you do want to be built fast. Champions like Carnage, you want to make sure that he goes first before your opponents, so you're able to land the critical debuffs to lock them out. Or champion like Marius, who does have that AoE buff strip on his A2, and so you're able to destroy the Stone Skins, and it doesn't matter how fast you go, and because as long as you go first, you have a good chance of wiping out your opponent's team, or at least getting rid of the Stone Skin buffs in order to go in with your next champion, right? But one of the big sort of differences now is if your champion like Marius doesn't have or a champion like Marius has no survivability passive, right? If he dies, he dies. And so the faster your nuker gets, and if he doesn't have any form of protection, I think the best bet nowadays is to put him in 9-piece Mercurial. 9-piece Mercurial is just so strong, even for nukers, that it is just a very, very incredibly powerful set that will help your nukers get that survivability even if they go first. So let's say your Marius goes first against a Predator. 3 hits of the A2 doesn't kill the Predator. But now, instead of not having any stone skin on him, he at least has that 3 stacks of Mercurial. So even if Predator gets a turn, it doesn't take any damage, right? Unfortunately for me, I just don't have any good Mercurial accessories for my Skinwalkers. Let's see what I have here. Yes, yeah, like I have this accuracy banner, but there's no speed on it. This is attack banner, but it's not that good. This HP banner, it's just not great, right? I could probably, and do I have a crit damage amulet? I do have a crit damage amulet, but no rolls in accuracy, right? I could probably cobble and then attack ring and an HP ring. I could probably cobble up a 9-piece Mercurial set for my Marius, but it's not going to be worth it for me because of how good my feral gear, or how good my stone skin gear is, and how good my lethal gear is, right? I've been building up these gear sets for years, and they're really good on my Marius. So for me, what this means is I just have to choose Marius less into Predator because it is going to be inconsistent, right? The same kind of goes for Carnage, where I have really good Swift Parry gear. I have this banner. I have this insane Feral banner. Look at this banner and tell me you're going to replace this banner with Mercurial. It's just unfathomable to think about that you are going to one day have to replace this banner. Look at this banner. It has 35 speed on it. And how are you going to tell me that you are going to find a better Mercurial banner to replace it, right? That's a little bit of the problem. Of course, my Carnage does have a 4-piece Swift Parry set, so he does have a little bit more extra tankiness, assuming he rolls a 50-50. But it is hard for me to make the adjustment, even though it will be better the longer the game goes on. It's hard right now just because of a little bit of the gear limitations. But for champions, again, they do want to build fast. You do want to try to get them into that 9-piece Mercurial in order to give them a little bit extra tankiness. Because if you don't kill Predator, Predator kills you, and all of a sudden the game's hard. But now let's talk about the other camp. Let's talk about the slower champions, the champions that can afford to be built slower. And what should you do with them? Let's talk about Embrius. I think Embrius is, to me, the biggest change that I have realized on my account that has worked out the best for me. Now, again, historically, Predator or Embrius is a champion that, you wouldn't mind building pretty fast. He has in the past this really good ability on his base form that pretty much takes away all the stone skin buffs, provided you don't try to hit the lightning cage or you don't weak hit or whatever, right? So it was a fairly good ability and a fairly good champion to have run pretty fast, maybe faster than your other nuker on your team who can. So Embrius gets rid of the stone skin, or at least some of it, and then you can go in with another nuker to kill them, right? But now, of course, there's still a bunch of lightning cage, but now it's kind of useless against Mercurial, right? Embrius base form has been really gutted in terms of its utility overall since the meta shift. And right now, Embrius is really, really just a really good damage dealer, right? He's still a fantabulous damage dealer. He is one of the best. I'm not saying he is bad, but I'm saying his Form 1 has lost a lot of utility in terms of wanting to go first, right? So now we have this problem where, again, if you build Embrius to be fast, let's say right now I have 314 speed, right? That's fairly reasonably fast, especially because it's faster than Predator. If Predator is 250 speed, Embrius goes first, he flips into his second form, doesn't kill Predator, and then again, Predator is going to kill the Embrius, right? So what does this mean for nukers that now want to be or can be built slower? What does this mean for how I gear my Embrius now? And look at this. I'm doing something that you would probably think unfathomable before this meta. And look at the stat difference. I am dropping speed boots on my Embrius. I am dropping my banner that I used to prioritize to have the fastest speed on to now having the most HP on. And look at the difference in stats that are going on here. I'm still in Stone Skin, I'm still in Lethal, but my speed, look at my speed. I dropped 75 speed on my Embrius. That is criminally crazy, from 308 speed to 233. And with this change, I am able to build slightly more crit damage, but a lot more HP because I'm now replacing my speed boots with HP percent boots. Like, I just had this fantastic pair of boots floating around. And why is this good? One, he has a lot of HP now, right? In his base form, he has 123k, and in his secondary form, he has 133k HP. That is a lot of HP. And so what is this good for? It means one, he just has more health to tank with. Even if he needs to tank a hit from Predator, he can survive. But now the most important thing here is his speed. I have him running at 239 speed. If you guys remember, what is the PSI for my meta? It is 250. Predators are running at 250 speed. I am now building my Embrius to be slower than what is already the slowest nuker in the meta. I am taking the speed of the Predator and I'm building my champions like Embrius that is really just a super focused damage dealer, and I'm building him to be slower than Predator. That is the big takeaway here. That is how you want to now be thinking about your nukers. You're wanting to separate them into two categories: champions that I want to still be fast, champions like Carnage or Marius, and champions who can now be built slow, champions like Embrius. And then Solnar again is another fantastic example. I covered this in my Solnar video if you guys want to check that out on my channel. But you know, Solnar is running at 220 speed, right? What is the commonality here? Solnar, Embrius, super damage focused. They can either, Solnar can dish out damage on his own without needing to take turns, and Embrius, who's lost a lot of utility in his form 1, now only can rely on the damage from his form 2. Because these are so damage focused champions that again also don't have any form of protection besides the stone skin that they have, you need to build these champions slower than Predator. Otherwise you're just going to die. That's kind of really how it is. And this is fantastic. This works. This has worked fantastic for me. My Embrius is now slower than the Predator. The Predator goes first, can't kill anybody because my Embrius has a freaking insanely big stone skin shield on top of the 120k HP he has. And then my Predator flips forms, kills the entire team. It works out really well. Now for champions like Marriage and Carnage, you know, I really haven't changed much. But for me, one thing I do want to note is I've been playing around with Mary's speed. Beforehand, I could get him up to as fast as 340 speed. But I've decided to drop a little bit of that speed in favor for higher accuracy. Because one, it's not as important to build so much speed on your nukers. I try to stress this point a lot. But two, I think one of the most important aspects of Marius right now is his accuracy in order to be able to either land the stuns, land the enfeebles, or even just make sure that he lands that buff strip, right? So for me, it's that extra added utility of having Marius on my team that makes it more important to be able to make sure he has enough accuracy to land his debuffs. He's still very damage focused. Ideally, in the future, if I could, I would get him into a 9-piece Mercurial. That is what I would want to do, but unfortunately, I just don't have the gear capacity to do that. Carnage, I think, in a similar boat. If I could get him into 9-piece Mercurial and maintain the same speed, the same accuracy, the same damage, blah, 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 I would love to do that. But again, look at this banner. How are you going to find a Mercurial banner that is better than this? Somebody tell me that. But for me, you know, I have two other nukers now, right? I have Solnar, he can be built slow. I have Embrius, he can be built slow. And these speeds are working for me. You might look at them and you're like, huh, you have Marius and Carnage running at 100 speed faster than your other nukers. How are these nukers doing anything? And the reality is, you know, that's what's happening. The meta is slowing down. There's less reliance on speed nukers. And all of a sudden, the nukers that you see nowadays are not running as fast, or at least are scaled down by this Predator, because it's scary to go first into Predator. It's scary because you might just not win. You're flipping a coin. So why risk taking that coin flip? The one thing that I will note here is if you are wanting to run your champion slower, of course, a champion like Embrace, if you put HP percent boots on instead of speed boots, you do get more tankiness. That is true. But someone like Solnar, of course, super squishy champion, you're replacing speed boots with attack percent boots. He's not gaining any tankiness. And so it's very useful to have something like Lightning Cage, of course, to protect your Stone Skin buffs, but it's also useful to have extra support champions, someone who can be there to soak up a lot of the damage or have that ally protection, or something like, Volcardiac, Heart, Bolster sets, whatnot, right? And I think that's one of the big reasons why champions like Necrit, for example, are seeing definitely more play in the meta, because it's important to be able to protect your champions that are going slow. Necrit, I'm not even going to introduce. He's been around for so long and he has that really, really fatty protection passives in his kit. For me, the champion that I do have is I have Neve. And of course, she plays a very similar role to me in being able to place that block damage buffs. So even if that Stone Skin gets stripped, I still have another layer of protectiveness to make sure that I can still get to take my turn, right? But that is it. That is how I'm building my champions in this new meta. Let's just quickly run through it again and just make sure that I've made all the gear changes that I have. But yeah, my Galathyr is now in a 9-piece Mercurial set. I've dropped a lot of resistance in order to make this work, but I think it's overall worth it. My Carnage overall, there's no change. He's still rocking the same build that I have. And I think it's fine. It's fine for Carnage to be fast. It's fine for him to be built for damage. But it would be nice if I had Mercurial on him, similar to my Marius, right? These are two Nukers that don't have any sort of protection passives. They don't have any ways of protecting themselves. And if you don't have Mercurial, you're going to have to take that risk that once they take their turn, they're kind of sitting ducks. Embrius is, again, the big one that I want to focus on here, and is, I think, something that is very easily doable when you look at your account to identify what your nukers are doing. And he is a champion that I have dropped a bunch of speed on. I've taken him down 70 speed. That is a lot. He's still in Stone Skin and lethal, but the goal again here is to make sure that he is slower than Predator. It is so important if you want to have champions that survive against Predator. The simple part is just to make them run slower than him. And that depends again on your PSI for whatever meta you're looking at. Crixia, I do have the option to, and I've been testing this out a little bit, but I do have the option to build Crixia in a much faster gear set, right? I have this. I can jump my Crixie up 39 speed. It's a lot, and it's fast. It makes a big difference, but for me, I don't have a good reliable speed aura that I can run on, my strongest teams. And so it's not often that I do get to go first with my Crixia, even with this build. And so for me, I'm still thinking that a Stone Skin set is good on Crixia just to give that extra survivability. I'm going to try to fit in faster other gear sets other than just the supersonic gear set, but for me it just so happens that my supersonic set is also one of my faster sets. Marius, I would love again to get that 9-piece protection or 9-piece Mercurial set in, but it's just not something that I have the current gear for. In the future, I hope that's the case. My Sifi, I decided to drop some of the speed in favor for a 9-piece protection set to have a little bit more utility, and of course this brings extra damage for my nukers as well. For me, I think the speed is still a little bit too low. I would love to bump this up to at least 420, but we'll see what happens when we get better gear. Fabian, I haven't really touched, but again, following the same principles, if I can drop some of this gear sets, like for example, this perception set only gives 5% speed, right? I have a lot of accuracy to play with. I have about 820 accuracy. I wouldn't mind dropping 100, 150 of it in favor for more speed, but I just have to play around with my gear sets for that, because historically I funneled my fastest gear onto my Sifi, and now I'm thinking about who's going to get what gear and how that's going to make them faster. I think Fabian has some space to get faster for that. He has some gear sets that offer a little bit less speed than they could, so I'm thinking I want to get that Fabian speed high, and I have some accuracy to play with. Solnar, I have built slow, and for similar reasons. One, I want him to be slower than Predator, and two, he can deal damage even without taking a turn. I think that's one of the fantastic benefits of Solnar and why he is super strong right now. Of course, just a bunch of different passes that he has on his kit. Neve, fairly unchanged, 9-piece protection set, and she's just a kind of staple champion, and her gear set's not really going to change. Mercurial is obviously super, super bad for her. But yes. Queen of Hearts, I've moved from what I believe was just a random stone skin set into a 9-piece mercurial set, and I've tried to build as much accuracy as I can. This is just the highest accuracy I can get with the highest speed or with my mercurial set. Of course, if I can get more speed or more accuracy, I'd love to do that. And the last champion, I talked a little bit about my Lady Noelle. It's not a champion that I use very much outside of Tag Team Arena, but I do think that it's a good example of, hey, this is a fantastic champion in today's meta, honestly, especially paired with Sir Nick. If you don't have the ability to build them in 9-piece mercurial sets, something like a 6-piece stone skin, I think is still a fantastic option for a lot of these revivers out there. And then I have my Alil, who I actually showcased another video this week, but just standard, built super fast with stone skin and lethal. But again, I'll stress another point on why Alo is fine to be built fast like this is because he does have a form of protection, right? He can generate a stone skin buff, provides he kills somebody on his first turn with the A2, and that gives him a level protectiveness that allows him to survive a turn, right? And these are some of the champions you're thinking, okay, if I want to build these champions fast, do they have any protection in their kit? If the answer is yes, then it's okay to build them fast without having mercurial. But again, if I had better mercurial sets for someone like my Marius, that would be something that I would do. Okay, let's wrap things up. That's going to be the end, really, of today's episode of the meta snapshot. And what nobody tells you about gearing your champions is really just all about the speeds you want to consider, how you're contextualizing the meta in terms of how you want to gear your champions, and why it's okay to actually drop some speed on your champions. I hope you guys found this useful, potentially entertaining. That's always really the goal. But if you guys did enjoy this kind of content, feel free to again join the discussion over on Reddit. But I would love to, I would love for you guys to give the video a like or maybe subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. It really supports me out, and I'd love to hear from you guys how you guys are adjusting in today's meta as well. But if you guys haven't re-geared your champions in the past month or two, this is definitely your sign to do it. I hope this video has given you some good advice on some of the things you can take away from it and how you gear your champions, and I hope this helps. But thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. I know I rambled on a little bit longer in this video, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys. Take care.